Liza Rossi, and I am Colorado Parks and Wildlife Bird Conservation Coordinator. Our agency partners with the Colorado Crane Conservation Coalition, CCCC, on school programs for children, the annual Yampa Valley Crane Festival, and on their Crops for Cranes program. The Greater Sandhill Crane is an iconic species of the Yampa Valley. They arrive each spring and March from their wintering grounds in New Mexico and Arizona. Cranes have benefited from the vast open spaces created by agriculture here in the Yampa Valley. Today, CCCC will take you on a tour of some of the crane-friendly ranches and farms where cranes breed in the spring and then where they gather in the fall prior to migration. You will hear from some of the crane-friendly ranchers and farmers about some of the practices they use on their ranches to welcome the cranes. We hope to give you an overview of the relationship between the Greater Sandhill Crane and our agricultural heritage here in the Yampa Valley.
Hi, I'm Laura Foulk, and I'm a volunteer for the Crane Conservation Coalition, the Colorado Crane Conservation Coalition, better known as CCCC. I'm here in northwest Colorado, near the small town of Hayden, and we are in the Yampa River Valley. The Yampa River Valley is a wonderful wetlands and agricultural area. They grow hay and alfalfa as well as grain crops. It's been a good ranching area for many, many years. The Elk and Yampa River drain into this region, and that helps create a beautiful wetlands that the cranes will like to nest in and feed around. Today I am on the Yampavian Ranch located just outside Hayden, which is owned by Nancy and John Merrill. I'd like to introduce you to Nancy Merrill. Hi Nancy, how are you doing today?
I'm fine, how are you?
I'm doing great. Can you tell us about your ranch?
I would love to. So, I live here with my husband on the Yampavian Ranch, and we purchased this property in 1998. It was a small hay and cattle operation at that time, and we were looking for a piece of property that we could create a bird haven. I'm a birder for a long time. I love birds. After we purchased the property in 1998, we decided to keep the hay production going because hay fields also attract a lot of birds. We have bobolinks, we have western meadowlarks, we have red-winged blackbirds, we have yellow-headed blackbirds that all hang out in our meadows. What we didn't know when we purchased this property is that it happens to be in the center of the Yampa Valley crane staging area in the fall. So to our delight, when we moved here full-time, we discovered hundreds of cranes in the surrounding fields as they were getting ready to go south for the winter. So one of the things that I always had in my mind was, wouldn't it be great if we had some cranes nesting on the property? We have tons of robin nests, tons of swallow nests, tons of oriole nests, but we have never had cranes nesting on our property until this year. And lo and behold, this year we have not one, but we have 2 crane nests on our property. We're standing here in the middle of a wheat field on the Yampavian Ranch, which is part of the Crops for Cranes program. And this wheat field, I believe, was instrumental in bringing in some cranes that ended up nesting here on the property. They arrived here in March, and I would see them feeding in the field every morning and every evening. And then one day, about mid-April, only one crane showed up. Then when it flew out of the field, I tracked it and went to the location where the crane landed. And I searched that location, and sure enough, there was another crane sitting on a nest. So now I would like to show you where that nest is. Follow me. Here we are right next to the crane nest, and as you can see, I'm wading in water here to get to the nest. These cranes chose a perfect location to put their nest. Cranes can only nest on the ground, and so their preference is to nest in a wetland area like this, either surrounded by water or right next to the water. This nest is surrounded by water, and you can see it's not too much to talk about, really. It's a lot of cattail litter that they pulled together to make sort of a nest-like structure. And both parents take turns sitting on the nest, and it takes about 30 days for the eggs to hatch. And as soon as those chicks hatched, within a very short while, they were able to swim across the water and to begin feeding on the other side of this wetland area, which is rich in food, insects and frogs and all kinds of critters that are wonderful crane food. So here we are in one of our irrigated hay meadows. And each year we harvest approximately 150 tons of high quality hay. We run the hay operation a little different than other people in the valley, and that's because we want our fields to be very bird friendly. Some of the grassland birds, like the bobolink, have declined significantly in their population. So our hay meadow, we don't cut the hay until after the bobolinks fledge. And that's usually later in July or early in August. And that way we get the benefit of the crop, and the bobolinks can come back year after year and nest in this beautiful irrigated hay meadow.
Our next guest is Loretta Davidson Munger. She is here on Yampa River Ranch.
Yep.
And she's married to Doug Munger. Loretta is both a rancher and a world-renowned weaver, as you can see by this beautiful ponchos she makes. But we're here today a little bit to talk about your the agricultural workings on this ranch,
Right.
and what kind of birds we're seeing and what we're seeing as far as the cranes.
This is a cattle ranch, very much working ranch. And in the spring, when they come first, it's still snow and cold, and the calves are just starting. It's really neat to just, because they just walk quietly and they're in the puddles eating.
And so this is a working cattle, and do you do haying at all here?
Oh yeah, so in the winter the cows are here and we feed them all through the winter, like 6 big bales a day, the big brown bale ish, depending
About how many
on
head do you have?
180
Okay.
ish. It comes and goes. I think we'll get a few more. So you winter them and feed them the hay. So then spring, then they birth, and then we move them off of here, and then we haul them with the babies and moms to different pastures. Now we're getting ready to let the earth grow again, let the grass go, and then we'll be haying like July 1st.
Wow.
Ish.
It's a never-ending job for sure.
It is. Then you hay, you cut the hay, and then you haul it, and then you get ready to feed, and then fall comes, and we ship off the babies, and that's when then you feed the babies feed the mamas.
Feed the mamas.
Yeah,
Okay.
all through the winter, and they do it again.
So when do you find time to weave?
Oh, every day. I weave daily. The kids, I dye daily, which is the mom's downstairs dyeing because my studio is here on the ranch.
And so the cranes and the cattle and everything
Oh,
interact beautifully, and
Oh, they are totally interactive. They don't interfere at all. The coolest time is in the fall when they come back. Okay, we've hayed, pretty much done haying, or even during haying, they'll come back, depending on when you get done. But then they just walk along and they're eating the grass, and they really do love the hay seeds. And you can see 20, 30, 40 at a time when they're together. They gather and they're different. I mean, they go to they have their little areas that they like to munch on better. But the flying is really cool. I mean, because you'll just sit here and they're
watch 'em.
learning. They bump into each other.
oh, when they're learning
Oh,
to
yeah.
fly.
They are totally teenagers, and then they get it, and then they go higher and higher, and that's really fun. This is the first time we've seen a pair nest and baby here.
Oh.
So we see them usually on the ranch at different times, early and later.
And then later.
when they come
Okay.
back, and then they leave.
But it's amazing to see how resilient and adaptive all the creatures are.
Oh my, yes, very much so.
Yeah.
And we need every one of them.
Yeah. Hi, I'm here this morning with Marcia Dockenbach of the Rocking Sea Bar Ranch.
That's correct.
And we're here at her ranch right along the Yampa Valley River, right behind us. And as you can see, all of Steamboat airing behind us here. And Marcia is a long-time rancher and advocate of agriculture in the Yampa Valley. So I understand, Marcia, that this ranch has been in your family for a long time. Can you tell us a little bit about the history?
Well, in some ways we are newcomers to the valley, but my grandparents, on my mom's side, first moved to the valley in 1937. And he was a carpenter and heard that construction was going well in the steamboat area. So they came from Nebraska, and in 1939, my dad's stepdad came out here to hunt, and he realized that he could feed his family here because they were literally being starved to death out in the Dust Bowl. And they moved out here in November and actually went to work for a neighboring ranch. And then when this place came open in 1946, my dad, his brother, and his stepdad bought this place and started to work at it.
So has what you've grown on the ranch and the agriculture you've seen here changed through the years?
To some degree. When my dad and mother were doing this, there was they did a little bit of everything. They raised a little wheat, a little barley, a little oats. They had pigs and chickens and cows, never sheep. And then it was simple economics for them. The more
Okay.
that you had a little bit of everything, the better chance you had of paying the bills. Then when my husband and I integrated within the program, we fairly much got out of grain production and strictly went into hay, grass hay and alfalfa hay.
And that was mostly an economic decision?
Yes, I would say it was an economic decision, not only because the price of grain was plummeting at that time, but also some of the equipment was getting very old. And if we were going to really go into grain crops, we were going to have to make some investments. And so we decided we would rather be in cattle and put up the hay and invest in those pieces of equipment rather than in rather than investing in the grain equipment. When the Hitchens brothers first started to raise crops in the late 1880s, they were raising it for particular horses, and the cattle, but more so for horses. And then of course everybody started developing a little more acreage, and it just grew and grew and grew. Most people did not have the big equipment. They didn't have the large acreages to really put in big amounts of grain. But at one time in the 1980s, there was over 85,000 acres of either wheat, barley, or oats here in Routt County. I believe that we are now down to less than 10,000 acres.
Less than 10,000? Okay. That's quite a change.
Quite a change. And again, it was economics. There were a number of things that went into that. A lot of the ranchers, a lot of the farmers were getting older, and they just simply did not have the means to keep going on and on. And then at the same time, the government offered a program called Conservation Reserve Program, and literally paid farmers to take crops out of production, and it put it into grass. And I'd be glad to introduce my grandchildren to you. They're fifth generation
we'd love to
here.
meet the fifth generation.
Levi, can you come in?
Yes, we can.
So this is Leah, Alan, and her brother
meet you.
Levi.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, Levi. Good to meet you.
16 and 15, and they are the backbone right now of this operation. There's not much between the two of them that they can't do.
I was wondering, have you seen the cranes around here? What kind of relationship do you have with cranes?
I saw one this spring actually just out here, and it had a little, I don't know what you call it. It was like a fluffy little duckling.
Oh, I think
And-
they call those colts actually.
Yes, okay.
kind of like a young horse.
Yeah, so I guess I saw a colt and a mother, and it was really cool seeing them up close.
And so, do they just feed on the hay, or what attracts the cranes to this area?
What they like about this, particularly in the early spring, is that the meadows are bared off. There's a little bit of grass trying to grow up, and then it's pretty secluded here. They don't have to worry about being close to people. They don't mind the cattle, and they don't mind the horses. They get a little more excited when you're out there with an ATV. But they will nest. They come in the early spring, and then some of them stay here to nest, and so they'll be here all summer. And then in the late fall, or early fall, they will come back and be here when these meadows are being irrigated. And they kind of congregate through this whole valley before they take off.
Do they damage your crops in any way?
No, they don't. The hay ground, they're just part of the natural environment. They do a little more damage with the grains because they get in there with those great big old wings, and they can flap around and knock the heads off. And so that's one reason that the Crops for Cranes program is so good. It kind of narrows them into a place where they can eat and they know they're welcome.
That's lovely. I'd like you to meet Sharon and Terry Jost here, and we're going to discuss a little bit about the property and the cranes and your ranch here in town. So, how long have you lived in this property?
We have been here for 18 years.
And what drew you to this location?
Well, we had just moved from Iowa, and we're looking to establish our own ranch.
And so what do you grow here on your ranch?
Primarily, we raise alfalfa, and then we do also have some grass hay.
I understand that this property is very conducive for cranes, both for their gathering food in the springtime and for staging before their winter migration. What about your property makes it so attractive to the cranes?
I think we have everything that the cranes like and need. We're close to the Yampa River, which gives them their roosting protection. We have our alfalfa that they have come to for years. We also have our neighbors that grow grain crops. So there's just everything that they like and need.
As the people, our craniacs, enjoy viewing the cranes, have you had any issues with all the birders who may come locally to view the cranes?
We have actually had no problem with birders at all. The cranes are in abundance in the fall, and so we want to share those with everybody. I mean, they're not ours, they're everyone's. And we get up to 400 plus cranes in the fall. And I think that in the past few years, the recognition that the birds are here, the cranes are here, has attracted more birders. And so we see a lot of people coming to view them. As far as I know, we've had no damage.
No, they're all very respectful, and you know, we enjoy sharing our property. And
Do you have any damage from the crops due to the cranes?
well, they do eat the tops out of the alfalfa some, but you know, as far as I'm concerned, the animals were here first. The cranes were here, the elk were here. Yes, it does cause a small amount of damage, but that's part of living here. It's part of the enjoyment of it, and it just comes with the territory. In the fall, when we have 300 or 400 cranes leave en masse to go to the river to roost at night, it's pretty spectacular if you haven't seen it at sunset.
I find myself having to walk away from the window to get my work done because I'm watching them constantly.
What else do they eat besides the tops of the alfalfa and some of the local grains?
Well, it appears that their diet in what interests them, it varies through the year and from day to day. A lot of the times when we're harvesting alfalfa, we disturb a lot of the larvae and bugs right along the surface of the ground. Normally you don't see them in these small grains until the fall, when they're actually, you know, a head of grain on them that interests them. It's the close proximity of everything, the water and the different small grains that the neighbors produce in the crops for cranes field is right across the fence from us. And then the alfalfa and the grass is just a wide variety of them in a very close proximity. So I think it's the combination of everything.
So Sharon, I understand that one of the things that you like to do is to count the cranes that you see coming around. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. At Nancy's request, I have counted the cranes and the birders on a daily basis, and I started doing that. I started counting cranes probably in late March when they arrived. They actually arrived about March the 10th. I think the highest number of cranes I counted was 267, and the highest number of cars that I counted on a daily basis was 7. And it has been a lot of fun, and it's been pretty knowledgeable, really, to see how many more viewers we have gotten in the last, say, 2 years than what we have had previously, because due to the festival, this area has become more popular, and so we get a lot of craniacs, which we enjoy watching.
Such a wonderful experience to be able to be a part of it all. And a lot of that's thanks to you guys, too.
Well, and thanks to the cranes.
And thanks to the cranes. I'm here today in northwest Colorado, right outside of the town of Craig, Colorado. And we are here with the Doyle and Ashley Moon, along with Annika and some of their barnyard friends around here. Tell me a little bit about your ranch.
Oh yeah, you bet. Thank you. My grandfolks bought it in 1989, and they've kind of made it what it is today. They've done all kinds of different improvements as far as center pivots and getting the meadows and hay crop as good as it is today. They've done new barns and corrals so we can work and operate with cattle as efficient as we can.
So this is very much a working both cattle and ag operation here?
Absolutely, yeah, yep. We're a hay ranch. I mean, that's what kind of pays our bills, and we cater to the working guy as much as the horse people, you know, and we grow alfalfa, grass hay, and
so I understand that you're trying this new wheat product.
yes.
Tell us a little bit about it.
Triticale is a variety. It's a hybrid between wheat and rye, a cereal rye. And supposedly these cranes they're addicted to it once they find it. So I'm hoping that we get some good footage this fall when they start realizing what we got going for them. And I'm always kind of interested and willing to try something new, especially if it ain't putting the whole operation in, you know, a financial, financial. So, that's kind of how we got started, and it's been just a work in progress ever since.
So tell me, how do you feel about living with the cranes?
So one of the things I really enjoy is in the springtime when we were calving and we were up to our knees in mud and snow, is the cranes flying overhead, and it was just kind of that first signal of spring, getting to listen to them. It's always exciting. And then yesterday we were out moving cows and came across a pair and just got to watch them interact with each other and listen to them. It's just always really nice to slow down and take that moment to listen to them and watch them.
With the crops that you're doing, so you were growing this triticale specifically for the cranes, or are you also?
Yes, this year I am. It's about a 25 acre plot that we decided to set aside and do this for the crane program. Yeah, especially partnering up with the Crane Coalition, that it's just been a good experience, and we're just moving forward.
So the cranes are still kind of used to coming through and your hay area first of all, and so they've been eating. So they're used to eating the hay grain, hay as well. And
yeah, and I believe they're munching on some bugs and stuff.
Okay.
And then once this the triticale and like this grass seed and all that starts heading out and starts producing some, that's when they kind of thrive.
I do understand that the triticale is such a treat for them, and they just like to kind of get all their bodies ready for that long flight they're going to have to take. So we're here now up in the triticale field that Doyle has planted this year, and we can see how we're getting some irrigation going. But can you tell us a little bit about this field, when you planted it, how the growth is coming?
Yep, we planted it Monday the 18th of May. I think those dates line up, but it was right in that area. And it's just been a tough year. We've been so dry. I mean, we haven't had really a stitch of rain. We fertilized it, and then we worked the ground, so that fertilizer was, an inch to 2 inches underneath. So it should be getting a hold of that by now, and I think it's starting to wake up and really come on now. But,
so it's about 4 or 5 weeks old now then?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Excellent.
And it's just been cold until this last week, and now it's just hot, and the winds blowed all spring, so it is what it is.
Colorado.
Yep. But no, I'm extremely happy with how it's coming on, and hopefully we're gonna make an outstanding crop here.
So we're now at Doyle's brother Nate's ranch, at his farm here, where he has planted a field of triticale as part of the Crops for Cranes program. What can you tell us about this triticale as compared to yours?
Okay, so we come in here about 18 days, 19 days before, and he must have been a little more worked up, or the dirt was ready or something, because he's doing an outstanding job growing this stuff. This is where triticale just will blow you away. It just explodes, especially on these nice hot days. Right here where it's all kinked up, I mean, after it emerges, it's gonna straighten up, and that's how it just shoots up. So I mean, like this one here, that could have been only like 3 or 4 days that it emerged.
Wow.
and it just, once it comes, it all just straightens up. And you know, there's a different stages where you can harvest it. If we was to hay this, you would want to hay it while it's in the boot, so we wouldn't be able to find any of the head. Now he's to the stage where we'll just take it all the way and we'll come in with a combine, which is what the plan was from the get-go. And once this gets going, it'll form little seeds, and this is where the triticale actually is in these heads. And that's what the cranes will be eating. You know, the droppings out of the combine, no one's perfect, and you can't ever get a combine set perfect. So that's what, it just scatters it on the ground, and that's what they'll come in and clean up for us, and that's what they thrive on. So triticale is becoming so popular with livestock producers is they can plant it late summer and get some great fall pasture, and then they'll graze it off basically down you know, a little bit above the soil, and then they can let that sit through the winter and then do it again next year and harvest the triticale. So it's doing well here, and we're pretty happy with how everything's going. So
we're here just down the road from Doyle's Frosty Acres Ranch, here with his parents, and they own the Yampa Valley Fiberworks here. This is Louis and Lorraine Moon.
So our business is milling natural fibers, anything shorn off an animal, into yarn and whatever projects our customers would like. So we have people send their fiber from all over the place, but it definitely started with our own herd being right here in the Yampa Valley. Make sure people understand that things can be right from their backyard and be used into beautiful projects like this.
How do you guys interact with the cranes?
So we've, when we were small kids, I think the cranes were just first coming back. Because they used to put us on a bus from the Hayden schools and go up to the Hogue Ranch. And we got to watch cranes. And so an interest grew of cranes like at a really young age. So when we moved here and out irrigating, I would see the pair that's been homesteading here for quite a few years. And so I'd always make note of that. And so when Doyle heard of, you know, the Crane Festival and was learning about it, of course, that was kind of clicking back. And so we kind of said, you bet, let's plant some stuff. And he's the man to get her all planted and groomed. And so we've just made a happier habitat for them with his help.
I hope that today you enjoy meeting some of our current Crops for Cranes farmers and ranchers. These folks welcome cranes and visitors to their land, and we'd like to thank them and appreciate their support for our program.
A while ago, Levi and I were maybe like 6 or 7. We were starting to get to know all the birds around, and we saw a crane and we thought they were super cool creatures, and we thought we wanted a pet crane. And so our grandma was telling us a story about how our great-grandfather would always say to put salt and pepper on their wings, and that way they wouldn't fly away. So Levi and I thought we were going to be pretty cool and sneak up on the cranes and put some salt and pepper on them. We never got close enough.